Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Outside the Box. And I'm with my friend Zack Kramer here. You can see we're in the scruffy city of Knoxville. We're with Trinity Strength at his gym. Zack, how's it going, man?
Doing well, man. How are you?
I'm so thankful every time you get on the podcast. Just so you guys know, before we hit record, he's like, so how long you think we're going to go? And I was like, how long do you got? Because I can talk to you all day about this stuff.
The good news is I can talk about breathing all day too. So
if you guys didn't see, our first podcast was on breathing, and we just did a demo. I hope everybody has checked that out. If you haven't, it's somewhere. In the interwebs. In the interwebs, you will see a demo with me and Zack on breathing. Out of curiosity, when did you get into breathing? Like, what was that signal?
Well, it's funny. I actually was thinking about this not too long ago. I was like thinking back on how I got into breathing and why I'm so obsessed. And but I actually realized I remember sitting on our desktop computer when I was in middle school, Windows 95, hitting the timer and seeing how long I could hold my breath, just repeatedly on our PC. And then I would do
very odd way.
It is a very odd memory. Yes, but I just was always interested in breath holds and going underwater and doing breath holds in the pool. And I guess eventually somewhere I forgot about it. But then, have you ever heard of Wim Hof?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so long story short, maybe 5 years ago, heard about Wim Hof. Started doing his breathing stuff and was hooked again. And just kind of delved all the way in.
For those who aren't familiar with Wim Hof, explain in 30 seconds kind of what his philosophy is. I know there's the hot, cold.
Yeah. Mainly cold.
Mainly cold.
Yeah, he's all about cold. He has a very specific breathing pattern to follow that kind of changes your state of mental. I don't know. He says get high on your own supply. So it really does give you this kind of euphoric high. But there's a lot more to breathing past that. But that's kind of what he focuses on is his breathing patterns and then cold exposure.
What do you suggest doing something like a Wim Hof breathing routine versus implementing just the nose breathing stuff in it? What's because the breath work with Wim Hof is intense and puts you a little bit in a hyperventilating state, correct?
Yeah, correct. So usually what we recommend is if people want to try out Wim Hof, that's fine, but you need to be ultra focused on nasal breathing throughout the day, nasal breathing while you sleep, adding in some breath holds throughout your day because Wim Hof style breathing, which is actually called tumo breathing. That's kind of the yoga name for it. But doing that is getting rid of all that CO2. So you've got to really train extra hard to keep your CO2 tolerance high. So most of the time we don't introduce people to something like Wim Hof until much later.
What do you mean by CO2 tolerance? Because I know it's something that your body needs to get used to. Mm-hmm. For the listeners there, what does that mean?
So basically we want to become more tolerant to CO2. We can essentially equate stress to carbon dioxide. So just to make it easy, think that carbon dioxide equals stress. So the more carbon dioxide that builds up, the more you're more likely you are to breathe heavy. Okay, because you're trying to get rid of that CO2. We use oxygen, we breathe out CO2. Well, we actually want to be very tolerant to CO2 because you can imagine if that's what makes you breathe heavy, if you're not tolerant to it, the more you have, the more stressed out you are just throughout the day. The more tolerant to CO2 you are, you're less stressed throughout the day.
And a way to build up your CO2 tolerance would be?
Things like miniature breath holds. If you catch yourself taking a big sigh throughout the day, try to add a little bit of a breath hold in after that. And then other than that, just making sure you're nasal breathing throughout the day. If you exercise, nasal breathe while you work out, things like that.
And that'll, because I think whenever I've tried to get used to, CO2 and is it your brain? Is it CO2?
Just your whole body.
It's your whole body?
Yeah.
At first you feel like you need less of it, so you need to breathe more.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right?
You're trying to get rid of the CO2. So your body's inclination is to breathe out more.
Right. So you think you need to breathe more.
Correct.
And what's actually happening is you're getting rid of that CO2, mm-hmm. which means you're going to be less tolerant to it.
Yeah. Yeah. The more you get rid of, you get used to a level of CO2. And so as soon as that rises, you want to breathe out the CO2 to get back to that level. Okay, but if you get more tolerant to it, and this is your baseline, then you don't have to get rid of as much. You don't feel like you need to breathe out because you're used to this much all the time.
And that's when you're at a more calm state.
Correct. Yep.
So, for the people who are stressed or feel like their, cortisol levels are skyrocketing,
Yep.
What's your prescription for that? Is it just nose breathing, or is it breath holds?
Breath holds. Yeah, miniature breath holds. Nothing like, you're not doing max breath holds, but like if you were to work with us and we were to create a program for you, we would do miniature breath holds and gradually build that up. 4 or 5 second breath holds here and there. So nothing crazy.
Right, nothing crazy. And I've tried breath holds just while walking,
Correct.
While doing push-ups or something like that. Something that's, 5-10 seconds, but it really does help. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, we program people all the time, something that's called a Buteyko walk. So they can do it in a gym. You can do it out when you're walking around. It's named after the person who came up with this. Anyways, basically what we have you do, we'll just have you go for a regular walk. You're not trying to have an intense walk or anything like that, just enjoying the stroll. But you'll take 3 breaths, you'll exhale your air out, and you'll just walk till you feel a moderate discomfort, holding that air the whole time. And when you feel the moderate discomfort, you go ahead and breathe 3 normal breaths and repeat.
When you say, are you exhaling through your mouth or through your nose?
Through your nose, ideally, yeah.
Interesting. So that is
But you hold it. So after you exhale, you hold your breath, and you keep walking until you feel like
Are you breathing in 3 times, like 3 sniffs?
Yep, just 3 normal breaths. So
okay.
Out, in, out, in, out, hold, and walk.
And just so you guys know, it is nose breathing, preferably in and out.
Mm-hmm.
Is there ever a moment when you would want to breathe out through your mouth, like you said, with a sigh or something like that? I know a lot of people think that's relaxing, like when you. Mm-hmm. Is that something you prescribe?
It's probably relaxing because you're getting rid of the CO2. So
which isn't that great.
Long-term training, we're working on building the CO2. Short-term, yeah, maybe that feels relaxing in the short term.
But only a short-term fix.
Correct.
Not a long-term fix.
Then you're going to feel that repeated stress, feel like you need to do that.
So the goal is just to continue to build up tolerance with the CO2.
Correct.
Super fascinating. Okay, so you got into breath work at a young age.
Yeah.
and we've talked a little bit about your career in fitness, and kind of walk us through, because we're in your gym here, and how'd you get here?
How did I get here? Yeah. So, man, I've always enjoyed exercise, I guess. Cousin got me into it at a very early age, and enjoyed training through football, and then got into CrossFit when I was in grad school and wanted to keep doing some sort of competition. I really enjoyed exercise, so it was like, I can compete in exercise. Mm-hmm. So got into CrossFit, enjoyed that. Then we moved to Knoxville. We opened up our own gym, and my goal is always to coach the best. And so we gradually, I started out doing fairly normal CrossFit programming, coaching people on the big lifts like cleans and deadlifts and these things. And, gradually I tried to help people more and more and more. We just started to shift kind of our practice, our scope a little bit more, where we started incorporating breathing because I saw how important that was. We started incorporating a lot more mobility because I realized how important that was for people to do the movements correctly, nutrition coaching because of how much of an effect that had. So we just gradually added more and more and more and dialed in our services to where we were really helping people.
What have you changed your mind on, out of curiosity, between, that moment where you opened up your CrossFit gym to now? Is there like a couple big things that you've really changed your thoughts on?
Yeah, there's quite a few. The one that jumps probably most, for whatever reason, right in my head, and it was a little bit of a left turn, but would be just like you can't out coach somebody's mobility. So a lot of the times, as new coaches, we're working with somebody on something like a squat or a deadlift, and I think, man, if I could just get you to understand what I'm trying to get you to do, you could do the movement better. If I needed you to have a bigger chest, or I need you to push in this direction, or have your knees do this. But what I've come to realize is a lot of people just literally physically can't do what I was asking them to do. And so we've basically taken a few steps backwards to work on specific joints to then allow them to do that in the first place.
When you say mobility, because I know so many of us, have lack of mobility in certain areas. What do you mean? Is it a mobility? You said joints, so maybe you just can't get down as far as you would like them to. That sort of deal.
So we'll just talk about the shoulders. I think those are the easiest to describe. So when I say mobility, I don't just mean flexibility, like being able to touch your toes or something like that, but actually being functional throughout an entire range of motion. So, we should be able to put our hands over our head, keeping our core engaged. And a lot of times we would coach people when we're doing overhead presses, for instance, with dumbbells or a barbell, and they press the weight over their head, and we'd see this big arch in their lower back. Their chest would rise up, chest would start to face the ceiling, and their back would arch. And we'd say, okay, try to keep your chest down, right? And a lot of times we, early coaches, me included, just thought, well, I just got to get this person to figure out how to keep their abs tight, and then they could do the movement correctly. But what we realize is most people can't put their arms over their head while keeping their abs tight because their shoulders are so tight. So literally, if you think about, you can try it right now if you're listening, is, keeping your abs as tight as you can, keeping your chest down towards the ground, but then bringing your bicep all the way up next to your ear where it's vertical overhead.
Okay.
For most of us, what will happen is as you get to a certain height, you'll have to lean back in order to get that hand straight up and down. Especially if you have weight, you'll feel that lean back.
Is the shoulder thing a sign of aging in any way? Because we're constantly thinking about, okay, what are some things that we lose as we age that we can prevent, which might push back that aging date?
I would say it's only equivalent to age in the idea that the longer you live a certain lifestyle, the longer the more time you have to lose that mobility. So we see that same shoulder issue in high school kids too.
Okay.
But I think the bigger thing is that we spend so much time leaning over, arms down. We don't use our full range of motion very often. We're all sitting all the time, or we're at a desk, and we just lose it if we don't use it. So,
yeah, that's exactly right.
Right.
What do? You said take a couple steps back to address some of these, this lack of mobility. What are some things that we can do to loosen up our shoulders? I know so many of us have back issues.
Yes.
Is there
Lower
anything
back's
that we can
usually
address?
Yeah. So a lot of the people that we work with individually, we actually begin by creating them a morning routine for mobility. Takes under 10 minutes to go through every single joint in your body. So we don't start with every joint. We'll kind of, build you up as you go. But it's a routine that I go through every single morning where we go through the full range of motion of every joint in the whole body. So at least we know every day, even if I was to sit at a desk the rest of the entire day, at least once throughout the day, I used all the range of motion of my joints.
So that would be something that really all of us can do is make
Absolutely.
Sure that, throughout the day, at least once, we're going through the range of motion on all of our joints.
Correct. Yep.
That's fascinating.
And from there, we'll use those same movements as kind of an assessment to see where are you tight, where do we need to work on before we include these other movements, and we can do specific stretches or exercises to open up those areas.
Okay. So what's the next thing that you've really changed your mind about in terms of what you've seen in the gym?
Maybe just the amount of work that's necessary to stay fit. I think a lot of us feel like in order for me to lose weight or to build muscle or to be able to increase my endurance, I've got to commit, 2 hours a day and do super high intense and work my tail off to get into shape. But it's actually much less intensity, much less work is needed. It's just a focus on what you specifically need. Is that too broad?
No. I think that's actually relieving when you're mentioning it. I'm like, man, thank God. I don't have to commit, an hour and a half, to the gym every single day. But, what that also means is that you got to be super intentional about the things you do while you're there. What are some kind of 80-20 type stuff where if you hit these spots that most people, are going to be fit, for lack of a better word?
I mean, not to go kind of not to miss your question, but really it's just whatever your issue is that you need to take care of that you've been putting off is going to make the biggest difference. So we'll talk sometimes about difficult, easy, and difficult, hard. So difficult, easy would be for a lot of people, difficult, easy is coming into a gym and doing just a grueling, hard workout and then killing themselves. Sometimes that's actually easier than coming into the gym and doing shoulder mobility and nasal breathing while you're on a bike. Those things aren't as fun. It's more like eating your greens. It's the stuff that you actually need. And so, but you'd rather just come in here and lift something heavy and weigh yourself out and feel like you got a good workout in.
And that's the thing. Like, you feel like you got something done.
Right.
And I know, a lot of times, in the demonstration we just did, like, it was short. It wasn't like physically taxing,
right.
But, it was good for me. Mm-hmm. How do you discern between the difficult, easy, man, I'm going to crush it today, versus something a little more slower. I might not feel like I got as much done, but I actually got more done.
Yeah. I would say that maybe that's where it would tie into your 80-20. Like 20% of the time, do that fun thing, just crush it, weigh yourself out, and be done with it. The rest of the 80% of the time, we need to be doing the things that are really moving the needle for us. I mean, if you think about the real pros, people like LeBron James or like Roger Federer or somebody, they're doing the things or Tom Brady, like they're doing the minute things that aren't super exciting, and that's why they've had so much success for such a long time. They're taking care of their joints, they're eating correctly, they're focused on their breathing, as opposed to just lifting as much weight as they can and seeing if it gets them strong.
But you're exactly right. But also, building muscle is still a big part of this whole equation.
Yep.
So, are you still a big believer in squats and pull-ups and all that, mixing that in while also working on the mobility, the breathing, the nutrition?
Yeah. So our philosophy with those things is, let's train, we're going to train the muscles. We're going to train pulling with our upper body. We're going to train pushing with our lower body, all these things. But we're just going to adjust the movement so that we're training in the range of motion that you have good control over. So if I know giving you a barbell and having you press overhead makes you use your back instead of your shoulders, well, I'm trying to train your shoulders.
Got it.
So I'm going to give you a movement, maybe it's an incline bench or something like that, where you can press in the range of motion you have without compensating with your back or with something else.
That's super fascinating. Just being, mixing in those movements, but doing it in a way where you also protect from your weaknesses in a way, the arch back, etc.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that you've changed your mind on?
I'm sure there's others. Those are some of the biggest, though.
Well, one thing I know that you're doing is you're moving into more of an online model. Mm-hmm. What's the biggest difference between that from a coach's standpoint and coaching somebody in person? And where do you see this whole thing going?
Well, the biggest difference, one of the main reasons we're going online is so that we can work with people individually. Throughout the last year, that's where, we've kind of grown in our philosophy and our coaching, where we could see how much more personalized attention people needed. And throughout the past year, it really gave us the opportunity to do more one-on-one training in person and online and, dial things in specifically for people. And that's just become kind of where my passion is to go all in with individuals for what they need to meet their schedule, but also their mobility and just their overall health goals. So that's why we've kind of moved in this direction, away from having a location, away from classes.
I think, so much of everything is going online, and it's opening up so many opportunities for people. For those who don't know, what is online training?
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like? Because I know a lot of people are thinking, well,
how do I do this?
Am I just watching a video? What's that?
Yeah.
What's it like?
Yeah, so if you were to come to us and we were going to do online training with you, we'd have a consult over Zoom or over video, and then we'd begin with some assessments. So seeing, having you go through some of these movements like we talked about, assessing your mobility, and we'd create a plan from there. Now, how that looks, logistically is we have an app where we have communication through. You can message us, ask any questions you have. Your workouts are in there each day, maybe some habits that we want you to focus on, whether it's, even just checking off that you nasal breathed all day or checking off that when you sighed, you held your breath for a few seconds afterwards. Those are all part of your individualized plan. And your workouts for the day have all the videos that teach you exactly how to do them that we've done here in the gym.
So, how are you able to do an assessment via Zoom? What does that look like?
Yeah, the assessments we do are actually fairly simple, just because we do one joint at a time.
Okay.
It's very easy to see, and we either do that live or we'll have people submit videos to us.
Yeah, it's very interesting that things are going that way. Telemedicine's becoming a real thing, and I think I think what's going to end up happening is just access is going to be,
Absolutely.
you're in Knoxville, but you could be helping people in the Tri-Cities or
Right.
Atlanta
Right.
or wherever. And I think that's super cool. I think it's super cool. And
Yeah.
what's
I'm
your
excited to kind of bring our reach a little bit bigger, especially, one thing I'm passionate about also is just being able to reach more people in Knoxville. So we're not keeping this, our focus is on mobility and breath just kind of in this corner, but actually being able to bring it to the larger community.
Do you think more and more people are going to adopt this model, and more clients are going to be, actually doing like working out this way?
The online.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are always people who are going to appreciate being with other people, which I completely get that. I enjoy working out with my friends. I think that's going to stay huge. But as, more and more people get used to doing stuff online, I think it's just going to naturally happen, as well as people who, a lot of our clients are past members who maybe they travel a lot or they just couldn't get here during our schedule. And so now they have a membership to Planet Fitness or somewhere and they follow our plan because they know, what we're doing. We have their best intentions in mind, but they just do that somewhere else on their own schedule.
Yeah, I think so much of like exercise is, having the confidence that you're doing the right things.
Correct.
Like just knowing that I'm doing the right exercises, I'm being smart about it, because I know a lot of people get stuck in this, doing the same thing over and over again.
Right.
And, that might not always help us, even though
Right.
we get the endorphins from working out.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And you see a lot of aimless looking faces if you go into, like a Globo gym.
Zack Kramer, man, this has been a blast.
Yeah.
Tell the people
Thanks.
how we can find you, how we can find
Yeah.
this, what you're doing online.
Yeah, so easiest place to go is just trinitystrength.org. If you go there, you can book a call with us and we'll hop on Zoom and talk about your goals.
Rock on, man. Guys, this has been Outside the Box. I am your host, Ben Rogers. Thank you guys, as always, for hanging out. We will see y'all next time.
Thank you.
Don't go away.